the Concordia City Commission meeting this evening. Although we are not meeting in person, this meeting will be conducted with the same level of formality as in-person meetings. As a reminder, the public is welcome to participate during the public comment section of the agenda only. Listen for instructions. Business conducted during the remainder of the meeting may include questions and comments by commissioners, city staff, consultants, and scheduled presenters only. This meeting is being recorded. Please be respectful. Attendees exhibiting inappropriate conduct will be removed from the meeting. Thank you for your cooperation as we continue to effectively conduct the business of the city. Do we have an invocation?
We do.
Okay.
Father God in heaven, we just thank you for today, and we just thank you for this weather. God, I pray for these officials, city officials and the elected officials that we have. God, I pray that you just put your hand upon them, guide them as we go through this virus. I pray in Jesus' name that you eradicate this virus. If that not be your will, God, I pray that you speak to someone that comes up with a solution to this virus. I thank you for protecting our county and our city. And I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving to the agenda, I'll ask, are there any changes to the agenda?
We do have a couple of changes. First, under discussion, we are going to flip those around. So Amber will give the quarterly financial report first, and then I'll discuss the impact of COVID-19 on our operations and programming. We also need to add 2 action items. The first will be an emergency revolving loan for Super 8 Motel, and that will be right under the emergency loan for Cozy Corner Learning Center. And then just after the bid for construction for the airport runway, we're going to add approvals of work authorizations number 5 and 6 from Benish.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
I have a motion from Christy, and was that you, Marsha?
Yes.
Okay, second from Marsha. Okay, thank you. Public comments. This is a time where
we need to vote real quick, Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. Public comments. This is a time where citizens are encouraged to speak publicly. The use of video conference technology can be challenging when inviting public comment. To help us proceed in an organized fashion, we request that you use the chat feature to indicate you would like to speak. Please type your name, address, and the topic you would like to discuss. If your name is different than how you are shown on Zoom, please also include your identifier so we can unmute the correct microphone. We will acknowledge speakers in the order they are received. When you are acknowledged for your turn to speak, we request that you introduce yourself, stating your name and address. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Are there any public comments?
I don't see any in the chat, Mark.
Okay, no public comments. We'll move on. Discussion agenda, financial quarterly report.
Hello.
Hey, Amber.
I have the financial statements for the first quarter, and they're in the usual format. If you look at the first page, it discusses the revenues first, which property tax, sales tax, and franchise fees are our main collections, and all of them are in line with expectations and comparable to prior year. This would not, none of the revenues or expenses here will have any effect from the virus, as it was all through March and all the collections for sales tax and franchise fees, and those come after March. So up until that point, we're seeing everything as expected, 33% of our budgeted revenue, which is compared to 32.5, or the other way around, 32.5% as compared to 33% last year, but basically the same. So on target for revenues in the general fund. As far as expenses, that's also on target. I showed that there is a 2% difference between the years, and the main reason for that was our airport expenses for the runway reconstruction, and we have not got the go-ahead to get that reimbursed yet. So for the first quarter, that amounted to $126,610 that we'll be getting back, that we haven't got yet. So if you add that back in, then we are right where we expect to be as far as expenses through the first quarter. And that's just in the general fund. And all the other funds I just mentioned quickly are on target and within projections, because again, nothing will be in effect for the water fund either. We can't see any effects yet. And then if you want to scroll to the end of the packet, there was just a quick summary on, trying to get there, on the sales tax. And that was again just showing how the first quarters are comparable, only a $7,000 difference. And again, it's not going to see any of the effects of COVID-19, but to date, we are looking in line with budget, and it shows all the detail in there too. But are there any questions over that?
No, I appreciate the way you put that together, Amber. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very easy to understand.
Even for a guy like me.
Yeah, and me.
Thanks, Amber. No other questions. We'll move on to impact of COVID-19 on city operations and programming.
Mayor and Commissioners, I emailed you late this afternoon a memo that describes the impact to operations that COVID-19 had on the city, and we're going to kind of work through that email. I did also email it to the department heads and the media. If anybody else wants a copy of it later, they can get one. I believe Stacy also added it to the packet that's published on our website, so people can access it there as well. We know that the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent economic recession did have an impact on our operations, and we're going to walk through several different facets of that. We're going to walk through the budget impact as well as operations, summer programming, and then I'd like to give an update on our different projects and talk through if there's a need for any pause points within those projects as well. So we'll begin with the budget impact. Since early April, we've been monitoring our various revenue streams and trying to forecast what will happen as a result of people's behavior in response to the COVID-19 virus. We've been getting a lot of information from the League of Kansas Municipalities, as well as our individual agencies that have been advising us. We've talked with several business owners as well to kind of gauge an impact there. And we've categorized these into the different funding streams. In the general fund, we'll look at property tax, sales tax, and franchise fees. For property tax, that comprises about 20% of the city's general fund budget. The league has advised us that we can anticipate about a 15% decline in property tax revenues for this year. They believe that property tax payments may be delayed or not paid at all due to many businesses that may have declining revenues due to declining sales or temporary closures. Also, there may be an impact in the unfortunate event that businesses may close, or in the unfortunate event that people have lost their jobs or had reduced hours and may not be able to afford their property taxes. The league reported that about 30% of property taxes across Kansas are paid in escrow, which means that, as I understand it, and maybe I'm wrong here, but as people pay their mortgage, for example, they have also opted to pay in that portion of property taxes so they can make sure that they have that payment ready to go. So again, only 30% in Kansas is done that way. The rest of the payment relies on people to have those funds available and pay them on time. We won't know for certain what this impact is until we receive the report from the county clerk, and I believe that's usually done in June. A 15% decline in property taxes for fiscal year 20 would be estimated at $134,000 revenue impact to the city's budget. As far as sales tax, and Amber just described that so far things are looking good. Again, we haven't seen the impact of COVID yet. Sales tax comprises about 40% of the city's general fund revenue. We received sales tax payments about 2 months in arrears, so we'll be seeing the impact of March sales with our May payment later this month. The league has advised cities to plan on a 25% decline in sales tax for the last 9 months of the year. The estimate, again, is based on declining sales from businesses and temporary closures, as well as people abiding by the governor's stay-home order during that time, and less discretionary income from those who may have had their hours reduced or have been laid off due to the virus as well. We do believe, however, based on our information for our area, that 25% is probably very high for our area. If we do plan on a 25% decline for the last 9 months, that would be $265,000 from our budget, or 16% of what we've budgeted for sales tax revenue for the entire year. Franchise fees are a little bit harder to determine. We know that franchise fee revenue has been down for the first quarter. It comprises about 13% of the city's general fund revenue. And we've been asked to basically consider a 10% decline in franchise fees. This would be primarily due to if there are large businesses in your area that may have closed or temporarily closed due to the virus. In our case, some of our large users include our school and our college, for example, and their early closure would have an impact on their energy consumption, everything from electricity to natural gas that we receive franchise fees for. On the other hand, with people staying home, their energy consumption at home may have actually increased. Weather also always plays a factor, especially in natural gas usage. We're hoping this is a conservative estimate, but a 10% decline in franchise fee revenue for this year would be $57,450. And that's it for the general fund. Are there questions about anything so far?
If I understood what you're saying, so you don't, they're advising to kind of guesstimate at a 25% reduction in sales tax, but you don't think that your thought is that Concordia may not experience that high of a percentage?
That is correct.
Okay.
We believe that our sales tax revenue decline may be less than that.
Good. Good. Okay.
As far as the water fund goes, Governor Kelly had ordered executive order number 2005 on March 16th, and that executive order basically told municipalities and other energy providers, you may not shut off people's utilities for non-payment. Normally, our policy is that by the time a person or an account is 2 months in arrears or 2 months behind on their payment, we shut them off on the next cycle the following month. This executive order was issued the day before we were scheduled to go out and do shutoffs. And so we had to act quickly to make sure that we had information out to our staff so that they did not go out and make shutoffs. And under normal circumstances, we have about 40 people on our shutoff list. And then the morning of shutoff between 7 and 8 a.m., about half of them come in and pay and avoid shutoff. Normally, we average about 20 people that we shut off every month for water due to non-payment. In March, that number was a little bit lower. We had 16 delinquent accounts that were slated for shutoff. The day after Governor Kelly's order was issued, only one person came in and paid. So normally we experience 50%. This time we only had one. As of May 5th, we now have 119 accounts that are delinquent and that are slated for shutoff as soon as the executive order expires. There's been some interesting legal nuances with the issuance of executive orders compared to the state disaster declaration, and I'll spare you those boring details. But basically, with the governor's latest executive order, essentially extended executive order 2005, the utility shutoff executive order, to expire either on May 14th or May 31st, depending on what happens with the state disaster declaration. So this means that in order for people to avoid being shut off, they'll need to bring their accounts current when they pay their bill in June for May consumption. The minimum water account monthly charge is approximately $50 in Concordia, and right now we have $18,111.44 that is delinquent at this point in time, or about 10% of our current total receivable. Staff has been communicating with these account holders initially by phone and as well as by a couple of letters letting them know what's going on and reminding them also that just because their payments are not due, the charges continue to accrue. So even though they did not have to pay their bill in April, they were still being charged for the water that they consumed in April. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We won't know the ultimate effect of this until we do actually have that executive order expire and we begin doing shutoffs. But I did want the commission to know in particular that we have been in communication with all of these accounts on a regular basis. This special highway fund, oh, I'm sorry.
With that, would it be prudent for us to set in place payment plans or other kind of structures that would allow for people to make their way up to it, but also to have that structure in place that?
Yes, absolutely. And that's something that I omitted from the email. We did offer payment plans beginning in March for people to we encourage them to set up payment plans. We offer those at 0% interest. We offer those to be set up for 6 months, and that should spread it out enough for most accounts. We are nearing the amount when people have been delinquent since January or February. Some of them are getting close to having $300 to $400 on their bills at this point in time. Any other questions on water bills? The special highway. Sorry.
Excuse me, Amy, this is Marsha. Are the delinquent ones some that in the past have not paid their bill on time, or are they mostly new people?
Yes.
Do you know?
Yes, we have what we call our frequent flyers, or the ones that we normally see on this list. And I believe the count from the April billing was that we did end up with 61 new delinquent accounts, and that number continues to rise. So we do end up with more new people coming on board that list every month.
Okay, thank you.
The special highway fund is used for street repair projects, and revenue comes from gasoline tax. The league has estimated about a 50% reduction in gasoline demand during the months of March and April so far. And we estimated that that could have an impact of about $11,588 on this revenue stream for our projects. We believe this is probably a conservative estimate for our area, but we won't know for certain until we get that second quarter payment, which will be due in July. The Special Parks and Recreation Fund is used for various parks and recreation activities and improvements, and it's funded by the state liquor tax. One of Governor Kelly's executive orders 2027 did allow for the curbside and takeout of mixed drinks in an effort to help boost those sales. We aren't going to know the impact of that revenue stream and those sales until the payments for the first and second quarter, and we'll receive those in June and September respectively. So to summarize, we're estimating a total of about a conservative estimate, a $450,000 reduction in revenue for the remainder of fiscal year 20. We have made some adjustments to our expenses to accommodate for those reductions in revenues. That does include planned use of reserves to cover about half of that revenue loss. Recall that we ended fiscal year 19 with the general fund reserve of approximately $1 million. So we feel like we're in a very good financial position to be able to use those reserves and not put ourselves in a bind going into fiscal year 21. And for that, I really want to thank Commission for your fiscal responsibility, as well as our department heads for their good management of those funds. Some of the changes that we are looking at making in expenditures to help offset the revenue loss, including reducing our non-personnel operating budgets by about 10%, and this will save about $118,000. Some communities were enacting hiring freezes, and we chose not to do that. Several of our vacancies are considered hard to fill positions, and it takes about 4 to 6 months to fill those positions anyway. We're hopeful actually that if there is an increased unemployment rate in our area, that may actually increase our pool of qualified candidates to fill those positions, and we don't want to miss out on an opportunity to attract a great candidate. We have reduced the number of our seasonal public works and recreation staff by about 50%, and that should save about $15,000. Due to Governor Kelly's executive order 2029, and that was the one that lifted the stay home order but put in place the phased reopening plan, our summer programming will be delayed, and that's going to result in a savings of about $10,000. And we'll talk a little bit more about summer programming as we progress through this conversation. Equipment transfers may be reduced by about $100,000. We'll determine this in September, and by then we'll have a better handle on what sales tax is doing and property tax collections. As I mentioned before, any revenue shortfall will be supported by the use of reserves, which should be about half of that expected amount. And any revenue shortfalls to the Special Highway Fund or Special Parks and Recreation Fund will be addressed through project delays. We'll continue to monitor the revenue estimates and on a monthly basis and make appropriate adjustments to make sure that we're still in compliance with the Kansas budget law and Kansas cash basis law. Are there any questions on the financial impact? Quickly on operations, the lobbies at City Hall and the police department have been closed since late March. It's been very quiet in that respect, with the phones are still rang off the hook, which is a good sign. People are still conducting business and we're still here to help them. We plan to open these lobbies in phase 2 of the governor's reopening plan. Social distancing would still be expected to be practiced by all patrons, as well as good personal hygiene. We'll increase our cleaning frequency, especially on frequently touched points. Municipal court is expected to reopen around June 1st. The closure was extended by one of their administrative orders recently. We'll still have to practice social distancing, which may mean that we'll need to rearrange some of the chairs in the lobby as well as in the courtroom to help maintain that social distancing. And then we'll be doing an extra thorough cleaning after the conclusion of court is over. Are there any questions on basic operations? All the other city functions continue as normal. We'll roll into a discussion on summer programming. Staff has spent a tremendous amount of time discussing and analyzing and synthesizing information, trying to find some directives from state agencies and anywhere from KDHE to CDC to the Kansas Recreation and Parks Program, working that in conjunction with the governor's reopening plan and trying to figure out what fit in and what makes sense for our community based on the data that we have. And understanding that we need to be cautious, and Chuck, I believe that you said it best, be safe, be smart, and be business friendly, and trying to find a way to say yes that will still leave our citizens the option to choose to participate in programming if they so desire. And we think we've got a pretty good plan to come up with that, so we'd like to share that with you this evening. As far as parks and playgrounds go, our open areas of the parks have been open and they will remain open during phase 1, which is what we're in right now. Outdoor basketball courts, tennis courts, and pickleball courts and skate parks are open in phase 1, but they are subject to the mass gathering guidelines, which is 10 people right now. In phase 2 and phase 3, those will increase to 30 and 90 people respectively. Social distancing is expected to be practiced in all 3 phases. And I would make a note here that with the tennis court project, we expect to resume work here within the next couple of weeks to finish that project. The courts will remain closed until that project is complete, and then we'll open them up for public use. Playgrounds are to remain closed during phase 1, but they will reopen in phase 2, and social distancing is expected. And we do have to provide informative signage to remind people to wash their hands and to stay 6 feet apart and to abide by mass gathering limitations. Park restrooms are also to remain closed in phase 1, and restrooms will reopen in phase 2 and will be cleaned daily, which is normal practice for us. Again, social distancing is still required, and we still have to put informative signage around the restrooms as well. Any questions on parks or playgrounds? The splash pad at the plaza is kind of a unique feature, and we're thankful for some guidance from KRPA about splash pads in particular. The splash pad will remain closed in phase 1 and will open in phase 2. Again, social distancing is expected and informative signage is required. The underlying assumptions of both the splash pad and the playgrounds is that those areas are not generally supervised by city staff. Criminal items are enforced by the police department, but this type of thing is really expected to be enforced and practiced by those using those spaces. So we are going to rely on our citizens to self-police themselves, for lack of a better word. The swimming pool has been a lot of time spent on that as far as researching what the best thing to do is for us. This pool obviously will remain closed in phase 1, but our public works staff is there to perform regular pre-seeds and maintenance and to get it ready to go for the summer. We do want to open as soon as is practically and safely possible. The staff is installing the final round of pool improvement features that were ordered earlier this spring, and that includes the climbing wall and the zip line that we had discussed. The swimming pool will open in phase 2 for lifeguard training and initial cleaning and setup only. Gatherings at that point are limited to 30 people and social distancing is expected. So we felt it best to just limit that area to lifeguards first. Normally our lifeguards are trained in our area indoor pools, and right now those are not open for operation. So we are delayed in the training of our lifeguards, and that's part of the reason that we're waiting till June 1st to do that. CDC guidelines for water, sanitation, and cleaning are going to be followed where practical. This pool is scheduled to be filled on or around May 20th, and lifeguard training will occur. It's currently scheduled for the week of June 1st. The swimming pool would open up to the public for use in phase 3, provided that sufficient lifeguard staff is available. Presently, we're very slim on our lifeguard applications, and so I would place a call to action to you or to the general public. If you know of anybody who is interested in being a lifeguard for us, please have them call City Hall so we can get them the information. You have to be at least 15 years old to be a part of that one. In phase 3, the gatherings are limited to 90 people, excluding staff. And so that makes it much more practical for us to open our pool where our average daily attendance is around 120, but 120 people may not be there at the exact same time. Again, we'll keep practicing social distancing, which we've received guidance from our local health department that may not be as intensely enforced in the water, but we do need to make sure we make an effort to enforce social distancing for those that are using the pool deck and outside the water and in the locker room, shower room areas as well. We still have to continue to follow guidelines for appropriate sanitation and cleaning. And we're looking at opening, targeted opening date for the public of the week of June 8th. During that time, swimming lessons would be held, but we may reduce the size of classes. Parents would be encouraged to be in the water with younger children. Swim team would be allowed to practice and may hold one exhibition meet, provided that social distancing can be met in the tents outside of the gate. The Kansas-Nebraska Swim League had announced that they will not hold a competitive season this year, but teams are left to determine whether or not they would have a recreational league, maybe with exhibition meets or practice only. The public swim, the noon swim for adults, Monday through Friday. The public swim from 1 to 7 daily. The evening family swim from 8 to 10 on Tuesdays are planned to be held at this time. And pool parties would be held, provided again that sufficient lifeguarding staff is available. Large groups such as daycares or day camps may be asked to schedule time during the afternoon so as not to exceed that mass gathering limit. And we had talked about some expanded swim programming for this year. We're kind of excited about that early on, but at this point in time, we don't believe that it's appropriate to expand that programming. We talked about admission pricing options, and we decided to keep admission options for daily use or the punch cards that don't expire or the season passes the same, and the pricing would remain the same. We're only delaying opening by about 2 weeks. We may need to revisit these pricing options if opening is delayed. Are there any questions about the swimming pool?
Amy, Amber, actually, I have a question about how much money do we lose on the pool every year on the operations?
Forgot to unmute myself. $90,000.
Okay, just curious. I knew we lost money. I just didn't know how much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And that was one factor that we did consider was, would it be easier to say the pool is closed this year and save that $90,000 to us? Staff considered that, but we really feel like having an option available for the social, emotional, mental health of our community is probably more important, especially where our finances are in good shape right now.
Amy, this is Chuck.
Yep.
A question I have real quick. Do we have a good pulse on our neighboring communities as to what they're doing with their pools?
We know a few. There's a lot of communities that are having decisions made this week.
Okay.
The only one that I know for sure, Miltonville took action on Monday night, and they will be opening in phase 2. Based on their attendance, they can stay within that 30-person maximum very easily.
I didn't know if other neighboring communities decide not to move forward, if that would actually end up benefiting us by having our pool open. But it sounds like we'll maybe know more about that in the next few weeks.
Yes, I know Clay Center is supposed to make their decision May 11th. Glasgow should be making their decision fairly soon. I know Salina made their decision early on to close Kenwood Cove, and I'm not sure of the reason why for that. And I know Clyde's pool won't be open this year because they had planned to build a new one, and I believe that project is delayed. So there are some area pools that are closed. I've not heard back yet from Belleville and Beloit on their final decisions yet.
Thanks, Amy.
Moving on to baseball, softball, and t-ball, information there. And this applies to both youth and adult leagues. So we want to make sure that we still have an option available for both of those this year. We do plan to proceed with those options and make those programs available, although they will be limited in some fashion. Registrations will be accepted now through 4:30 p.m. on May 13th, so it will be a fairly quick turnaround. Because the lobby to City Hall is closed, we ask people to use the alley drop box to drop off their registration and their payment. We're going to hold payments, so we won't deposit them until the first week of practice is over. And the reason for that is because we do have normally so many participants that in order to issue refunds, it takes a lot of setup and a lot of operations. So if we hold on to those payments and we know that the first week of practice has begun, we feel like we can roll with the season and go ahead and deposit those payments at that time. Draft day would be May 14th. No baseball, softball, or t-ball practices or games can occur in phase 1, which is the phase we're in right now. But practices can begin in phase 2. Gatherings are limited to 30 people per field. Excuse me. And that includes players, coaches, and spectators. And it includes the area inside and outside the fence. So if you had an invisible line running between the fields, an invisible dotted line, and you had spectators out and around your field, we have to count everybody that's associated with that field. So that's part of the reason that we're only going with practices in phase 2 and to be in line with what the plans are saying from the KRPA. Social distancing is expected, and practices are targeted to begin the week of May 18th if we're allowed to move into phase 2. In talking with our local health department, the social distancing aspect was a concern for us. And we were advised that players sitting in a dugout waiting for a batting lineup or coaches assisting a younger player with batting form, for example, are considered intermittent contacts. And so that does not violate the social distancing recommendation. So for those reasons, we believe we're able to proceed with baseball, t-ball, softball practice. We do also plan to enhance our cleaning a little bit, and we're working to get a hold of supplies such as an aerosol Lysol type spray to spray out the shared helmets or the shared catching gear, as well as some wipes to wipe down shared bats. And then we will also try to have some hand sanitizer available for each team in the dugout to use when they come back in at that point in time, and that will be for practices and games. But again, that we have to be able to get a hold of that stuff, and right now that stuff is in short supply. In phase 3, we'll begin games when gatherings are limited to 90 people per field, including players, coaches, and spectators. And game rules might be modified to reduce the potential for contact. We're still working through that. Social distancing is still expected. Excuse me. Some places are eliminating their bleachers or roping off their bleachers. We decided that was not a good idea for us. Many of our families may come and they need to use the bleachers. Maybe they don't have an alternative seating means. And we also believe that that also creates another area for people to sit so that they're not so crowded on the sidelines. But we are going to ask that every spectator that chooses to use the bleachers does practice social distancing. Players are always encouraged to bring their own water bottles. We don't provide those, but this year we're also encouraging them to bring their own helmets, gloves, batting gear, catching gear if they have it, if they're serious about play. We do have it available for sharing, but the less sharing that we do also lessens the potential spread for the virus if people are asymptomatic there. And as always, we are going to encourage people to practice their good hygiene and stay home when they're sick and wash their hands frequently and all of that as well, so that they don't spread it in these venues. Team sizes may also need to be adjusted to work within the mass gathering restrictions, just to make sure that we don't potentially exceed that 90 number. But that depends on participation level. It depends on ability to secure additional coaches, additional sponsors, and the ability to secure additional team equipment. So we'll just kind of see what happens and play that one by ear. Restrooms are going to be cleaned more frequently throughout this to make sure that we have adequate soap and water and paper towels handy, and just to sanitize things a little bit better. We'll definitely make sure, as we normally do, that we have hand sanitizer available at the concession stands as well. And every effort will be made to retain team positions for those players who choose not to participate this year. Normally, if somebody sits out a year or quits, they have to sit out a year and be redrafted, and they run the potential of not ending up on their team. But this year we're going to do our best to keep them in that spot for next year, but there's no guarantees. It depends on the numbers of people and the age balancing that then enroll next year for the program. Are there any questions about baseball, softball, or t-ball?
I know, Amy, we've had conversations and you give updates on the meetings that you're having, and I just want to say that really appreciate everybody's involvement, because it started out to be, how in the heck are we going to be able to do anything? And everybody's worked very hard to turn it into something a way that we can do these things, because it was pretty gloomy at first. And I know there's been some give and take at different levels, but I really appreciate everybody and on your team, and Chris and everyone for getting together and working through this. It's a monumental task. Thank you.
I won't say it hasn't been without heartache and a few tears and maybe a few, I don't know, screaming matches. Team, if you want to smile at me, that's okay too. It's been tough, that's for sure. We also had a lot of conversation about our summer playground program, and that's basically our day camp program that we hold at City Park every year. Last year we had an enrollment of about 130 children ages, I believe, 4 through 12, plus about 20 workers. The way that program operates is the kids are split up into groups, and they move around to different stations. They participate in different activities. They share supplies, they share play equipment. And we also ended up with some staffing concerns here this past week, and have decided that it's probably not in our best interest to try to hold that playground this year, primarily because there's no way that we can maintain adequate social distancing between or in groups and still keep our safety protocols in place that we put in place in recent years to keep the kids safe. In particular, a check-in, check-out system at a single point of entry, keeping the kids out of the street, things of that nature. So for this year, we will not operate our summer playground program. Are there any questions? Okay, that's it for summer programming. Commissioners, is there something that I missed that you were hoping to hear about today before we move on to the project status updates?
That was very thorough. Thank you.
Yeah.
Project status updates. We talked a little bit about the tennis court project. We hope to get that going and finished here in the next couple of weeks. Swimming pool improvements, phase 3, we talked about those as well. The zip line and the rock climbing wall will be installed toward the end of May. And we appreciate Ron's crew for getting the pool ready to go and getting ready to receive that equipment. The airport runway construction, bids were let on April 29th, and you'll hear more about that project later this meeting. The downtown alley and sewer replacement project, recall this was the one that we received a little over $500,000 on for a CDBG grant, but we had to come up with the other half of that money, and the other half of that money is planned to be made up from the water fund, from the CIP fund, and a portion from TIF. Right now, we're working on a project redevelopment plan that will allow us to use the TIF dollars for that project. And my discussion point here is, Commissioners, do you want to go ahead and proceed with that project as planned? Do you want to put it on hold? Do you want to decline the grant and stop the project? What would you like to do at this point?
Amy, if this is Chuck, I don't necessarily see any significant advantage to delaying it, but if there is an advantage, I mean, I understand the cost savings, but with the grants that are coming in, it seems like it still remains, I mean, it's a project that will need to be done. Work's not going to get cheaper. We have significant funds coming in that are not compromised at this point, but I don't know if I'm missing something.
I agree. I think that that's a project that really is in need of happening, and we need to proceed.
Yep, I agree.
I agree too.
Same here.
Okay. Thank you. And yes, we don't see any reason to not proceed with it, but I did want to ask about that one.
Sure. No.
The Highway 81 or Lincoln Street pavement restoration project. This is the southbound right-hand lane going south past College Drive. pavement restoration project. For that one, we received funding from KDOT, a CCLIP grant, and for $1 million. And then our local match is 100,000. And I apologize, I think I got the percentages wrong in your memo.
Yeah.
But right now that project is under design, and we anticipate bidding this fall with construction next spring. Project or local match funding would come from CIP. Is there any reason that the commission would want to not proceed with that project?
No.
I think that needs to be done as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, very definitely needs to be done.
Yeah. I just don't think we can give up the match funds and the opportunity of them, because there's no guarantee that they'll come back. And again, what Chuck said, we put it off till later, it's more expensive probably. So as long as these types of things are not going to, if something's not going to throw us way out of our projection or way out of, where we think we're going to end up at the end of the year, I think it's important that we go ahead and go through with it.
So far, so good as far as the projections on these, because they have been budgeted for.
I mean, my thought also is that I think because staff have done such a great job of helping to build our reserves, we have that cushion. I think, I think that it looks like that we're going to be at a pretty decent spot, at least through this fiscal year. I think that I would imagine around budget time, June and July, we'll have some pretty serious conversations about how conservative we want to be budgeting into next year. But I think that with the highway project, it's a good project to move forward, and we're paying 10% of that, and that fits pretty well within what we have budgeted. So,
thank you. The last one on our list is the Wastewater Treatment Plant Phase 2. We've had a lot of discussions about this. Had a study session in January, and design is currently underway following the Commission's approval of the design contract. We'll be 60% complete with the design by the end of May, and bid letting is expected to occur in the fall. Funding began several years ago when the Commission chose to add a $10 per month water meter charge to bills that paid for Phase 1 and began funding for Phase 2. To proceed with construction of Phase 2, we'll have to add an additional $4 per month per meter. And we had scheduled that to begin in January 2021. And the reason for that is we wanted the $2 per month for the pool improvements to expire first, and then we would add the $4. So the net feel or the net effect by our citizens is going to be an increase of their water bills in the amount of $2 per meter per month. We did talk with Dustin Avey, our bond consultant with Piper Sandler, and because bonding will be required for this project. And he's been tracking for us what the bond interest rates are doing, and they're hovering right around or just below 2% at this point in time. And those are also very good numbers as well. So definitely for this project, we definitely need some direction on whether you would like to stop with the end of design because we have those costs covered right now. Do we proceed with the project again under the typical notion that construction does not get any less expensive? We know we saw really good bids on the airport runway project. Perhaps we'll do the same thing with the wastewater treatment plant a few months down the road with interest rates where they're at. Could this be considered an economic stimulus project like the others are, because we're moving money around through the state and having it be spent here by the workers that are here? Or is this not the right time to add the $2 per meter per month to the residents of our community? And
part of me wants to say that the $4 a month on the meters, we could give some people some relief. But the other part is, with these projects, you touched on economic stimulus. It does bring commerce to our town to have these people come in and do things, whether it's food or lodging or whatever. I guess I'm the way I'm leaning, or I think we need to proceed on with the project. We don't know what the future holds for other things, and we're proceeding on this basically it's the old thing where, you have a manufacturing plant and you have planned maintenance on your equipment and you're going to do it. And it's best to do it when you're telling the equipment when it's going to be shut down rather than the equipment telling us when we're going to be shut down, because that gets to be more expensive. So I have the inclination to say that we need to move forward.
I also
agree.
think that, oh, go ahead, Christy, I'm sorry.
Well, I feel like this is going to be a pretty good time to issue some bonds in all likelihood. And our citizens have been paying towards this project for years. And I think that we need to continue on. We need to finish it up.
Good point.
I
would
think, go ahead, Marsha.
I would agree. I was on the commission when we put that $10 fee on. There was quite a bit of discussion, but we felt like, eventually you're going to have to repair the wastewater treatment plant, and it's not getting any cheaper.
Yep.
And I think we need to go ahead.
Yep.
I think too that the idea of lessening the immediate burden, I think that's well thought. My concern would be that right now it's going to be felt as a $2 increase from what it was, which is something. But if we were to take that away or to pause that and then either add on the $4 again down the road, or if construction costs have increased enough to warrant or to require a higher amount, then adding $4 back in or adding $6 in is going to be felt as a more significant increase than the slight bump of $2 now and getting the project done. It seems like it just would make sense just to have a slight increase now, getting the project completed. And, as others have said, the bond issuance is going to be a good idea at this point too. So I'm in favor of moving forward.
I'm in favor as well.
Thank you all. That's all that I had as far as project updates and questions. Do you have any questions for me?
It's a lot.
Thank you for the brief update.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
We're
Anytime.
not so
Happy to
brief.
talk longer. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Appreciate it. Okay, action agenda. Minutes of the April 15th, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I would move to approve the minutes from April 15th, 2020.
I have a motion from Chuck. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second.
Second from Keaton. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Appropriation ordinance number 8. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move we approve appropriation ordinance number 8.
I have a motion from Marsha. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Keaton. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Emergency revolving loan for Cozy Corner Learning Center. Kim's like, finally, I get to talk.
Because you know how much I love to talk. This extrovert just needs to see people. So I'm on here looking through everybody, just excited to see people. So that's a plus for me. So first one up is Cozy Corners Daycare. They had actually applied shortly after the last meeting, but said that they could wait. We didn't need to call a special meeting, that they could wait for the answer on whether or not that they were approved at this meeting. So in your memo, you will notice they are asking for $25,000 from the revolving loan fund. These dollars will retain 5.25 full-time employees, but it will actually save 7 employees' jobs, and that does not include Jessica Palmer, who is the owner of Cozy Corner Learning Center. So they are saving or retaining a lot of jobs here, and they have been completely closed down due to COVID, and she's just been trying to continue to help her employees out by paying them and giving them some relief. So they have, like I said, applied for that $25,000 with 5.25 full-time employment. Any questions on Cozy Corners?
Do I have any questions?
I move to approve the Cozy Corner Learning Center revolving loan for $25,000.
I have a motion from Christy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Chuck?
Keaton.
Keaton. I have a second from Keaton. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Emergency revolving loan for Super 8.
Yes, and so I visited with the owner of Super 8 for a while yesterday on the phone. This is a hotel that has been a long-standing motel here in Concordia that has provided a lot of lodging over the years, and their revenues have been cut tremendously with this. They're not obviously seeing any of the construction workers and different things come through because all of that has been placed on hold. And then the normal travelers, the people who have traveling work, and that's been put on hold. So they've really seen the effect. They've already had to furlough some of their employees. So when we were visiting yesterday on the phone, it was great because he had everything ready to go and sent in to me, and we were able to get this one through this morning. And so it's PRP LLC doing business as Super 8 Motel for $25,000. This will retain 4.75 full-time equivalencies or 7 employees at 58% low to moderate income. And this will be, again, 3 years, 0% interest with 6 months deferral on that.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I move to approve the PRP LLC DBA Super 8 Motel Revolving Loan Fund for $25,000.
I have a motion from Chuck. Do I have a second from Marsha.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome, and I'll let you know what I have been focusing on doing is calling around some of the other Concordia businesses that I know have been affected by this, just reminding them that these dollars are available, up to the $25,000 if they see fit. I have been visiting with them about the fact it is 6 months deferred payments, but then what that payment per month would be at the beginning of that at the end of that 6 month deferral for the next 3 years if they took the maximum, and visiting with them about whether or not they would be able to afford that payment. And so I do see probably, at first it was pretty quick and people were applying. I do see it slowing down some, but I do know that we're going to have, some more loans, some more loan applications coming in that the finance committee will vet through. The finance committee has been asking a lot of great questions, so I just want you to know they're just not pushing these through. We're digging deeper and we're asking questions and we're making sure that these dollars are helping to retain these employees and helping with their working capital that they're incurring as they're going through, whether it's a partial shutdown or a full shutdown. So I know they're very appreciative of these funds, and I thank you guys for working with us.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
And I'll look for your emails.
Yep, you will. I already have one of them put together, ready to hit send.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We'll see you guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bid for construction of airport runway 1836.
As we said before, we received bids on April 29th. We had 6 bidders for the airport runway construction project, and Brad Waller, our airport planner, is on the line with us. And so I'm going to turn it over to him to kind of talk through the bids and the next steps. And then following that, we'll talk about a couple of work authorizations that we also need to execute.
Hi, Brad.
Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing in Concordia?
Good.
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 Surviving, I think it's about the word of the day. I can. Well, this can go really, again, usually when I'm in front of you, as long as you want. I can bore you to death with details or try to hit the high level. So I will try to hit the high level here and go through. So feel free to interrupt at any time or stop me with any questions. Just a recap of where we're at. About 2 years ago, we came to you with a grant application for a 100% supplemental funding opportunity for construction of a runway. We ended up pursuing it and going after it, and we're selected for it. About a year ago now, we found out we're selected. We worked hard with city staff. It was a very collaborative effort to get a scope and fee authorized for design and get with FAA and get it coordinated. That design contract included survey, geotechnical, on-site efforts, aeronautical survey, and design services, including the bidding, to get us to this point in time. We started that roughly 1st of August and compressed a runway design that usually would take with FAA about 12 to 18 months and compressed it down to about 7 months to get to a bid. So there was a lot of trials and tribulations with this, but very happy to say that we bid the project last week. We received 6 bids, which is very good, honestly. Of the 6 bidders, 2 of them were higher than the engineer's estimate. And our estimate honestly stayed about where it was the entire time from 2 years ago till now. Just knowing that was our grant cap max, as long as it came under that, we're okay. I'm going to jump to a different number here. So of the 6 bids, we basically needed the base bid and the work for the runway to fall under approximately $5.9 million to make the numbers work. And we received 4 bids that were under that amount. One at 5. Let me just read the 6 of them. The 2 above it were 6.6 million and 5.8 million. The 4 below the 5.7 million engineer's estimate were at 5.5, 5.25, 5.05, and then 4.8. They were all the contractors that we would usually anticipate seeing. Cost Constructions out of Pika, Smoky Hill, MJE, Spore Land Development out of Colby, and Emery Sapp & Sons out of Kansas City. But the low bid for the project was Votes Parga out of Newton. They've done work at Ellsworth and other airports in the area. We've had probably 3 projects with them personally in the last few years on airports. So in talking with them and evaluating the bids, we found no irregularities, found them to be responsive and responsible, and therefore have drafted our letter of recommendation to move forward with Votes Parga in a construction contract. Now the base bid was $4.8 million. What we did was we divided the project into a base bid and 2 add alternates. The reasoning for that was the base bid and add alternate 1. Add alternate 1 was a connector taxiway at the midpoint. And if bids came in poorly, that piece could have been cut out to make sure we fell under the grant amount. So it was kind of a safety buffer. And it will continue to stay that as we go forward with the project. And then at alternate 2 was the lighting for the parallel taxiway, which is your existing runway today once the pavement's trimmed down and everything is demolished and taken care of. That came in at $177,000. That was bid as an ad alternate because back in the fall and coordinating with FAA, that was identified to not be eligible in the supplemental 100% funding. Instead, it was going to fall under the entitlement funding category. As you recall, hopefully you use $150,000 a year in entitlement funding. That is a 90-10 match. and it's banked up over the years. And you currently have, I've got the number here, you currently have $567,000 of banked entitlement at the moment. So plenty of money to cover it. One of the nice things, I guess, if you say it, that's come out of the COVID issue is Congress passed the CARES Act, which I'm sure Amy's been in front of you and talking about. The city's received $30,000 for operating expenses, 100% just to go get. But the other thing the CARES Act did as far as aviation activity is made the entitlement funding go from a 90-10 match to a 100% FAA paid for. So as it sits right now, everything that we're talking about with the construction contract, which is the base bid, add alternate 1, add alternate 2, are 100% under the FAA's grant and reimbursement. But it'll be much quicker of a reimbursement than what I know the design contract has been. But they all fall under the grant amounts. And that includes the engineering contracts, which you've already authorized the design we talked about last fall. And also the one that's slated, I think, next here to talk about with those. So those would fall under the 100% grants also. So we have recommended award of all of the base bid, add alternate 1 and add alternate 2. As far as the projects go and the contracts go, it's all going to be treated as one project, one everything. The difference on our end is the paperwork trail is we have to submit 2 grant applications, 2 closeout reports, 2 of everything. One is for base bid and add alternate 1, the other one's for add alternate 2. Where we would go from here is assuming everyone's on board and we receive a positive motion this evening. I would work with Amy and Ron and Amber to make sure we have the grant package submittal ready to go. It's probably about 15 to 20 separate documents. I've been working on it here while I was listening to your talk already. So, but working through that to get it submitted by Friday. And then from there, it is in FAA's hands. We simply are waiting for them to respond that the grant money is there. It's not going to be an issue of if they're going to award it. It's already been discussed. You've already been awarded. It's a matter of whenever FAA has the funds available and committed. You know, it's not like the project was awarded a year ago and 6 sitting in a bank for the last year. It's they have to get it from Congress and do that. So this whole COVID, they're very anxious of moving money out and getting it going. So it may be very quick. I am hopeful it will come by 1st of June. However, past experiences, it can be mid-late June or even into mid-late July. So given that the uncertainty is there, we have put together a start date of August 31st on the project. The plan is to construct the dirt work portion of the runway. That will be east of the existing runway in the fall of this year. That portion of the work, other than a couple of weeks of coordinated shutdown with Brian Donovan, will keep the airport open and not disrupt activities at all. We will have a winter shutdown and come back in the spring, and that's where we'll do most of the paving. Build the new runway completely and some of the connector taxiways and open the runway. Right now, the scheduled plan is roughly midsummer on this schedule we're on. At that point in time, we have phases 2 through 4, which involves taking the existing runway and removing pavement as it sits today and shrinking it down to the parallel taxiway. And then doing the connector taxiways into that runway. So other than, again, the couple of weeks of coordinated shutdown with Brian Donovan, and he's involved and he's been coordinated with throughout because he does obviously rely on that runway to make his living. We are going to have as minimal shutdown or headaches as possible on a local level. With that said, our targeted completion is the end of 2021. So basically full next calendar year. Hopefully it's sooner, but that's what I'm going to kind of shoot for now. So with that, any questions? That's kind of a brief summary synopsis. I'm sure I missed a thing or two, and Amy can jump in and fill in any of those. But we recommend award. And again, make sure that part of your motion is this award to Votes Parga Construction is contingent upon approval by FAA of the grant. What that means is Votes Parga, if for any reason FAA comes through and the grant falls through or doesn't do it, we've never had it happen, but you wouldn't be left holding the bag on whatever has been spent today. And basically what it simply means is Votes Parga and us, as far as the construction contract goes, even though you're approving it today and you would probably sign them today or tomorrow or whatever, they will not take effect to where we can spend money towards them or incur costs on them until such time as FAA has approved it. That makes sense. That way, that's your kind of your safety net to make sure the money's there. Just one other bit. I know you're carrying the design costs right now. Once we get approval of the grant, again, hopefully 1st of June-ish, something like that, I think within like 2 to 3 weeks, typically you can draw down on it, which is when the city could do the complete draw of all expenses to date, which would be the entirety of the design contract. So hopefully within the next 2 months or so, you should be able to get that 100% drawn back. Okay. With that, that's a lot of information. I'm sure I missed some things. What can I help answer?
Brad, this is Chuck. I think I'm really continue to be appreciative of all those that have put the effort into making this grant application in the first place, everyone that had conversations to help secure the grant. I think to be able to make this improvement to our runway at 100%, especially with the CARES Act, bumping that last little bit up, I think this is just such a phenomenal opportunity for our community, and I'm really excited to see it move forward.
Knowing, I agree with Chuck, and thanks for explaining that too, Brad. I appreciate it. Knowing, usually the tradition is that Chuck makes the motion on the longest motions. So do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the bid for Votes Parga, the base bid, and add alternate 1 and add alternate 2 in the amount of $5,205,308.66, and authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Votes Parga for the construction of runway 1836, contingent on approval by FAA.
Okay, I have a motion from Chuck. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Keaton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Approve work authorization number 5 with Benish for construction services for the airport runway.
Brad, do you want to take these again?
I mean, I can. This is our contract. This was an amount budgeted for in the very beginning of the project 2 years ago and included in the grant application. It was at that time because we didn't know calendar days or the phasing or how long the project would be. It just didn't make a lot of sense to take a stab at a construction phase contract at that time. So hopefully you remember, I believe we at that, last summer discussed we would be coming back to you with this contract prior to going to the grant. So we just need to get this contract, again, approved, contingent upon FAA funding, so that it can get into the grant amount. It's 100% reimbursable. I know that the city completed, because it's an over $100,000 contract, you're required to do an independent estimate. That was completed by Burns & McDonnell, another engineering firm. I haven't seen that, but I think I heard from Amy and Ron that it was good, or I guess more than mine, or what have you. So, you guys are welcome to discuss any of this. Might answer any questions on it, anything you have, but those would involve that. And as far as the environmental assessment one that's right after this, same type of thing. It's included in the grant. The original environmental assessment that was completed was done to do land acquisition. and those have a shelf life of, I could have on my head, a couple years. That one, NEPA actually expired for this runway construction and everything in like 2017 or 2018. So it was identified in the last couple of months. The FAA asked us to do an update to it. The big thing I heard was, since that was done 8 years ago, I think it's a long-eared bat is now a threatened and endangered species in the area, and we're supposed to look into that. So that, and I know there was 2 identified wetlands that I don't think anybody really knows where they're at. So nothing really to look at. We're just kind of jumping through that hoop to make sure it's taken care of. So,
Yeah.
But that should be included also.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve authorization number 5 with Benish?
I move to approve work authorization number 5 with Benish in the amount of $723,770 to perform construction services for Airport Runway 1836, contingent on approval of FAA, and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement.
Second.
I have a motion from Keaton and a second from Marsha. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Approve work authorization number 6 with Benish, which Brad just talked about, for NEPA reevaluation for the airport runway. Do I have a motion on that?
I move to approve.
I move to approve.
Go ahead, Christy.
I move to approve work authorization number 6 with Benish in the amount of $14,000 to perform an NEPA reevaluation for Airport Runway 1836, contingent upon approval by the FAA, and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement.
I have a motion from Christie. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Keaton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Authorize signing of FAA CARES Act grant agreement for airport funding.
As Brad alluded to, we were awarded $30,000 from the CARES Act fund to help out with operations of the airport, and we can use that over a 4-year time frame. It is a reimbursement grant, and we can be reimbursed up for 100% of eligible expenses over that 4 years. And we do need an authorization to sign that agreement and accept those funds.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I move to authorize the city manager to sign the CARES Act grant agreement for Blosser Municipal Airport in the amount of $30,000.
I have a motion from Chuck. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Keaton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.
Thank
Appreciate
you
your
very
help, sir.
much. Yeah, it's an awesome project. It's been great so far. I hope it continues for the next 1.5 years or so. I'll be very excited to come up and celebrate with everyone when the time comes. Just one little housekeeping thing on that. Just make sure that I assume it's implied here, but Amy will be doing all the grant application signing, and I assume that, I don't know if you need a motion, Amy, I can't talk about it. I just want to make sure that that implies that she will be getting all the money signed for her. So
Okay.
with that, thank you very much.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Next item, demo program application for 707 East 6th Street. Bruno?
There you go. I couldn't unmute myself.
Oh,
The first.
yeah. How do you do that?
I don't know. My wife would probably like to know. Anyway, yeah, you all know this building. Anybody that's lived in Concordia for very long knows this building, but this has been several uses over the years. The church has had it for several years, and they put Band-Aids on it forever, and it's just getting beyond what they want to do. And they've been trying over the years to clean this lot up, and eventually they'd like to build a church or use that for expanded parking if possible. But over the years, they've taken trailer houses and other things off this lot with all on their own and kind of cleaned that up. So I think this qualifies, and it's a very impractical building due to the highway widening and it's so close to the highway there. I don't know that any use would be very valuable in the future. And I think the lot would be more valuable and useful with it all gone.
Been an obstacle for a lot of years.
Yeah, it seems to, I believe it qualifies.
Yeah, I agree. Do I have a motion?
I move to accept 707 East 6th Street into the demo program based on the low bid of $7,680 from Snavely Construction.
I have a motion from Christie. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Marsha. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Manager's report.
I'll keep this brief, but I do have a couple of items I wanted to share. First, today we delivered some brochures regarding regulations about above ground swimming pools to several businesses around the area, including Walmart, Orchlands, Town & Country, and Home Store. And commissioners, if you know of any other businesses in town that sell above ground swimming pools or that sell supplies that would support someone purchasing one of those, let me know. We can send some brochures around there too. Because we adopted some of the building codes in the International Residential Code, it addresses the use and placement of above ground swimming pools. And our goal here is to help make sure that our citizens and their neighbors are safe if they choose this option for them this summer. We need to make sure that they're not underneath the overhead power lines. We need to make sure any electricity or plumbing connected to them is set up and meets code. We also need to make sure that they're inside and rear yards per the zoning regulations. There is a permit application to help work through all that process, but we are not charging a fee for this permit. We really just want to get the information out and help keep people safe in our area. Probably a big portion of that too is the 48-inch barrier that's required around the pool or that is the pool. Another thing is that we began enforcement of nuisances over the last couple of weeks, and I believe today Bruno processed about a dozen nuisance abatement letters that went out, initial letters that went out. So I do want to remind our general public to please make sure that you keep your grass less than 12 inches tall and make sure that you're disposing of trash and old materials, debris in an appropriate manner. Are there any questions?
I know where the problem. I've seen several of those around town that are questionable as far as the safety, because I always thought you had to have a fence around them. But hopefully it'll happen.
My insurance provider assures me that you do need a fence around it.
Yeah. Okay. Staff reports. Marsha?
Well, first of all, I want to thank the city crew for putting out the flower pots for us. We appreciate that every year. It's a big task, and we've lost a few over the years, but that happens. We will, as far as Downtown Beautification Committee is concerned, we will be starting sometime to raise funds to replace those pots. We have some that will be permanent in that they don't have to be moved in the winter. I'm sure the guys will appreciate that. So they'll be out all the time. We'll start that fundraising probably after the weather gets better and we get out and about. But I did want to thank them for that and thank all the city crews for the work they've done through this virus. I'm concerned about people not wearing masks out in public, but I'll get over it maybe.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Marsha. Chuck?
Just really appreciate all the staff for not only maintaining their current work levels, but also trying to adapt and respond to all the changes that are going on. I think tonight's meeting is a great demonstration of that, not only are we conducting a continuance of all the business we had been working on with projects and whatnot, but also adapting to and finding ways to make summer rec programs work to the best of our ability. It's a large undertaking anyway, and to add in all the nuances that we're trying to fold into it just really, I think, speaks volumes of how hard and how dedicated staff we have. I appreciate and continue to be impressed with all the work that everyone does. And as always, Amber, I appreciate you putting financial information in a way that I can digest. It is helpful. So thank you to everyone for your continued efforts.
Okay. I also am grateful to the city workers and what they do, and the staff and managers and Amy and everyone. There's a lot of, a lot of people think because City Hall's not open that people are, I don't know what, playing cards or what, but I know how hard everybody's working, and I think everybody else does too. And there's a lot going on behind the scenes with all of the staff and managers, and I really appreciate that from everybody. And I appreciate what the people in this county and town, how they're responding to this. And it's good to hear that some things are opening up and that we're moving forward with that. And I'm sure that we're going to have a successful reopening and get these businesses back, and hopefully get a few new ones. I'm thankful that we didn't have, I know of some businesses that, not necessarily here, that started out right before this happened, and it was a disaster. And I know we've got some restaurants that we wanted to open up, and I guess I'm thankful that they didn't, because at that time, because they'd be having a hard time. So just thank you to everyone. I did have one person call me and complain that we called off the citywide cleanup without appropriate notice, but he was out of town the whole time, and he was in Georgia, and I told him how we let everybody know, and I couldn't think of any way else we could have let people know. But I don't think, that's just one person, and he's a guy I know real well, so he really wasn't complaining, he was just giving me a hard time. So, but keep up the good work, everybody. Thank you. Keaton?
I don't have anything to add this evening.
Christy?
The only thing I would say, I would echo what's already been said about my gratitude towards city employees and staff for going the extra mile. This has been a difficult time for everybody, and I'm especially grateful that at this time it looks like there may be at least partial opening for some of the recreational activities this summer. I think it's really important. It's been a very long spring for kids at school who aren't at school right now. And it's time, I really feel like if there's any way possible that we can give our citizens some sense of normalcy, I'm very grateful for that. But of course, it's important to stay safe. So I understand that as well. So anyway, good job, everybody.
Thanks, Christy.
Yeah, with that, Christy, I'm going to stop on my way home and pick up my wife something for Teacher Appreciation Week. So.
Good idea.
Don't forget Mother's Day coming up.
I haven't.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion from Chuck to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Keaton. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Take care.
Good night.